Um, I'm Daryl Brand. I'm one of the leadership team members of the Rivers Coalition, and I wanted to introduce the other leadership team members, Jackie Levitch and George Jones. Jim Marr is not here, and Mark Perry is also in the leadership team. And we welcome you here today. A lot of things have been going on. We have two wonderful speakers today that I think you'll enjoy their talks. But first of all, we want to start with a SB 10 update. And Mark Perry, I'll turn it over to him. He actually has a handout that we can pass out.
Don't pass out. So I'm going to do two things. The Sierra Club put together. Here we go. So the Sierra Club put together a really good outline of what SB 10 is, and then on the back side it talks about the time frame at the bottom. So the three timelines between now and the end of the year are basically July 1st. The district has to request that the Corps of Engineers do that jointly develop that post-authorization change, which is to the A2 lands. If you recall, the A2 is at 14,000 acres. They're adding another 3,700 acres to that to make a reservoir project of at least 240,000 acre feet. So they have to initiate that July 1st. The district also has to contact the lessors of their lands that are being leased currently by sugarcane and other farmers. They have to contact them on those 3,200 acres and the 500 acres that's privately owned, and by July 31st. And then by August 1st, they have to begin to agree developing the post-authorization report. And then by January 9th next year, then they're going to be working to give that report back to the legislature. The governing board at their meeting on June 8th, last week, basically had nothing on the agenda about SB 10, but it did come under two areas, one under the executive director's report at the end, and also the council's report, the general counsel, who was Brian Mercado, who's their general counsel, reported about SB 10. And the two ways they did that were about the budget and how the fiscal year budget coming up for the district does have funding in there that's also allocated for starting this planning process, the $3 million, also the budget for the $30 million they need to start the process with the lands, and any land acquisition they need for those 3,700 acres things, and then moving it forward. And they reported that we're on track, we're ahead of schedule, we're going to move these dates, and we're going to meet all these deadlines. The whole thing about SB 10 and us looking at it, and here's another one to pass out too. If you could, and these are, the whole thing about SB 10 is that, is it going to do what it needs to do for us? And the point is it's a big storage project, and it's going to take a lot of pressure and scrutiny from us to really follow through with not only the district, but the Corps of Engineers and working together to get this done. And there's going to be a lot of fast-track planning that has to be done starting this year and into next year, the first next year, as they report to the legislature. So the other thing I'm passing out is this two-sided sheet. And if you look at this, with all these names on it, it's very simple. It's the people that voted for SB 10 in our state legislature. So the Y indicates yay, the N is nay, and there were 33 yays at the Senate out of 40 senators, and 99 yays out of the House out of 120. So when you look at this, the reason for this is that down at the bottom I circled the website you can go to contact these folks and let them know, hey, thanks for passing SB 10 and voting for it, and by the way, we're going to keep the pressure on, because some of these might come up for election next year. And if they do, they're going to want to make sure they know that they need to follow through with this, that follows through with SB 10. So I think that's what I put together just for this kind of handouts. And of course, if you have any questions about it, there's a lot of strategy going on amongst the environmental communities, including Coalition, as to how we can move this stuff along. But that's it on SB 10.
Thank you, Mark. If we can just do a short roll call of voting members. So why don't we go around the room? Jack, you want to start?
What do you want me to do?
Let's do a roll call of voting members for our.
So just say I'm here?
Correct.
What's your name?
Jackie Perlin with Rich.
George Jones, Orca.
Charles Grandy, President's Council of Hutchinson Island.
Daryl Brand, Palm Cove Yacht Club.
Mark Perry, Florida Ocean Graphics Design.
Jim Harder, Stuart Flat Otters.
Albright, Outlaw.
Joanne Swan, St. Lucie Sailing Club.
Alan Herskowitz with Sailfish Point.
Richard Earth, Harbor Ridge.
Mike Hunter, Bull Sugar, Nottaway.
Kenny Hinkle, River Warriors.
Jim Wood, Martin County Native Plant Society. Marcy Pitkin, Unitarian Universal Church. Gretchen Doom.
Richard Washington with Treasure Cove Buddhist Cooperative.
Farm Boston, Meadows Island Community Action Association.
David Lau, Palm Cove HOA.
Paul Laura, Treasure Coast, Democratic Environmental Caucus.
Jackie Transiger, Martin County Conservation Alliance.
Okay, are there any elected officials here that I can recognize? Don't see any today. We've kind of shuffled our agenda around and brought up River Kids to the top of the agenda. Jackie, you want to go?
Nick Mater, would you please come up and give the activity report for River Kids?
Hi, I'd like to bring up Caressa Kernan, who is taking over some of the events and activities this summer for us, which has really been great. We have some travel going on, and she is going to be one of the people that are going to be spearheading the event on July 8th. So I'd like her to tell you about that. And also this weekend on Saturday is the C4CW beach cleanup and activity and music and barbecue at Stewart Beach at 11 a.m. So if anybody can make it, it would be greatly appreciated. Bring out the kids and let's clean up the beaches and create awareness.
I think this event is aimed at kids, so they got a lot of the children organizations involved. So on last month, we were contacted by the U.S. Sailing Center, who wanted to do an event this year like they did last year for the River Kids. A free event where we can come out and use all their facilities for free, play, sail, kayak, paddleboard, that sort of thing. And we could do a little bit of fundraising if we wanted, outreach, that sort of thing. So we kind of took it a step further and contacted other companies that were there locally to get them involved as well. So Ohana Surf Shop is going to come and do paddleboard demos. I talked to Snook Nook. They're going to bring some poles out and teach the kids how to properly cast and tie a knot. I think Surf Central as well is going to come out. They have a new paddleboard that's like a convertible kayak paddleboard kind of thing. And we're still talking to other companies as well. So if you know someone who might want to be involved and just come out and do something free for the kids, let me know. What it is they wanted to give back to the kids that have been working so hard for the river. Let's get them out on the water to enjoy it and kind of take back what they've been working so hard for. So that's the event. I have flyers if anyone needs it. It's July 8th from 10 to 2. If you'd like to get involved, we can always use help. Just my number's on the flyer. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much.
Gotta have kids. All right. Real quickly, raise your hand if you have a grandchild. Come on, be proud if you have a grandchild. I have a grand dog, but no grandchild. Okay, awesome. And raise your hand if you have a young person under the age of maybe 13 that is in your life. Great. I have some extra books. These are not the new River Kid workbooks. We're still working on this. But these are handbooks for kids from the Florida Senate. And President Joe Negron's office contacted us last year asking if they could use the River Kids marketing artwork by Julia Kelly for this book. Hundreds, if not thousands, have been given to people in Tallahassee and kids visiting the Capitol, so we're very proud. And inside, there's all sorts of things like how to deal with your legislator, what's the state flower, what's the state mammal. I gave it to my husband, and he gave it back to me, and he said, Jackie, I read more reading the glossary than I've ever known about government. So there's some up here if you want them after. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and Todd is not here from our Speakers Bureau, but Todd runs the Speakers Bureau for the Rivers Coalition. And anytime any group would like to have one of our speakers come out, we have several types, several flavors, several approaches, but the message is all the same. And you can contact Jill at the Rivers Coalition or directly with Todd to set up a speaker. Okay, today we're fortunate to have two speakers and two different subjects. And I'd first like to start off with Deb Drum. Deb Drum manages the ecosystem restoration for Martin County, and she has some updates on some environmental projects.
So good morning, everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here. As you know, I'm here for every meeting, giving you a summary of all of the activities that are going on in Martin County. And I was very honored to be approached to give a more detailed presentation today, especially given the very interesting discussion that's been happening at our Board of County Commissioners in the past week regarding the sales tax referendum and how we pay for the necessary projects. So I wanted to kind of give you a little bit of view behind the scenes of how we actually determine which water quality projects are needed in order to result in a healthy river. It is not a very easy process. There's probably a lot more involved in it than you know, and I'm hoping to enlighten on kind of how we go through that thought process. And then I will give an overview of the kind of a summary of the discussion that our board had about a sales tax referendum this past Tuesday.
On the side, is John?
Okay. I'll do it. Sorry. I don't know what I would do without Jill. Okay, so just a quick overview. You all are very familiar with this basin, but there is about 538,000 acres that drain into the St. Lucie River right here. This is where we spend a lot of time and attention looking at the flows from the lake. But then you also have this very large area that flows into the estuary. And then there's an additional 100,000 acres on top of that 538,000 acres if you include the C25 basin, portions of which do flow into the St. Lucie. So it's a very large area that we're looking at. So the projects that I'm going to talk to you about today are projects that we do in Martin County to focus on cleaning water and more of this light yellow tannish area, kind of where there's urban systems, where people live, where we have a need to clean water closer. So a lot of the projects we do in Martin County are more local projects. They're not the large regional Everglades restoration projects that are done by other agencies, although we are very involved in those. We do a lot of projects that are more focused on local issues with water quality. And so just to get you, to cut right to the chase, I'm going to tell you what we've accomplished. In Martin County, we have completed since 2001 36 stormwater projects, and we've spent over $72 million. And these numbers have been recently updated. This was the list prior to being updated, where we had done 32 projects and $64 million spent. Just to give you an idea, we go to very specific areas and neighborhoods And all of these projects have been completed for the county. And I'll show you as a context of where that has us in meeting our water quality standards in a few minutes. But what I really want to point out is in Martin County, of that $72 million spent, about 47% of it was used with taxpayer dollars in Martin County. We've been able to leverage all of these projects using state money and federal money through a very effective grants pursuit action that we do. And so I just want to make it really clear that when we look at these projects, we're taxpayers too. And it's extremely important to us to get the best bang for the buck on projects, not to do unnecessary projects, to be well informed when we make decisions about what projects need to be done. We don't just willy-nilly throw darts at a wall saying, hey, this sounds fun, because these projects are complicated, they're expensive, they're important, and so we take this very seriously to ensure that we can leverage as many dollars as we can. And so you're getting a pretty good bang for the buck in this county with regards to how we approach our water projects. In doing so, annually, we reduced 27,388 pounds of total nitrogen that would have otherwise not go to the estuary, and 8,300 pounds of phosphorus. It's much more difficult to remove phosphorus from the environment than it is nitrogen. That's how chemistry works. And so our projects are really doing pretty well with nitrogen reduction, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Additionally, our utilities department, not my department or division, but utilities is responsible for doing the septic sewer conversions throughout the county. That's gotten a lot of airplay in the last couple years especially. And so they've completed 4 projects, they've spent $11 million, they've reduced nitrogen by over 17,000 pounds annually. That's a lot. The septic to sewer projects are not very good at reducing phosphorus, but they're very good at reducing nitrogen. They're important projects because of the pathogens that go along with septic tanks, especially along older neighborhoods right on the shoreline. We have been demonstrated to be a specific area of focus for us. So these are where some of those projects are, the completed projects. This is this is not the updated map. I apologize for that, but we just updated this information really within the last month. But there's the 3 yellow dots where the septic to sewer conversions have been completed, and all these blue dots are the water quality projects. There's 32 here, but we've completed an additional 4 or 36 all throughout the county to focus. And so there's a couple of ways that we make this decision. And when I come to you every month and I give you the update on this is what projects we have going on, this is the progress that we're making, to get to the point of constructing a project can be a multi-year process, just to get to the point of getting to a point where you can construct. So when I come give you the update of where we are with this particular construction project, you know, there's been a lot of behind the scenes before I can even get to that point to explain that. So you have to identify where your problems are. You have to create a conceptual scope of how you're going to deal with that problem in the watershed. These are things like baffle boxes, pipes in the ground. I mean, it's very disruptive to communities when we go in and do water projects or any projects really, because you're ripping up the roads, you're ripping up the sidewalks, you're also replacing all of those things, shiny new at the end of it, so there is an upside. But then the funding identification piece, this grant applications and budget approvals, for us to try to bring the county into contributing less than 50% of the total dollars that it takes to spend to do these projects, it takes an incredible amount of work and relationship building with granting agencies. You have to keep your finger on the pulse of all of the political processes at the federal and state level to understand where the money is, where is new favor being given on funding certain types of projects. It's exhausting work and it's necessary work. And so it is not uncommon for us to get to a place where we can actually fund a project where it shows up in our county commission's capital improvement project. It can take us easily 2 years to put the funding together to do a project. And so when we have a little time schedule showing that if I know, and I know right now in FY20 exactly what projects I want to do fiscal year 20, a couple years from now, 3 years from now, we have a 5-year view. And I can tell you every single project that we are laser focused on getting completed in this county, because we have to plan that far ahead just to get the funding lined up the way that we need to. And then, once you have like a couple years, you know, you've identified the problem, you have an idea. So when you identify the problem and the fix, kind of like conceptually how you're gonna fix it, that's the only way to know if you're gonna have enough, to know that you're asking for enough money. So you gotta find that sweet spot of figuring out what we need to do and how much it's gonna cost. And then you can bid the project, which is a three-month process that you go through. You receive, it has a whole vetting of credentials of different firms, and we go with the low bidder. Then you do the design and permitting for the project. Depending on the project, and if you've got, you know, complex permitting, that can take a year. I mean, you just never really know. Hopefully not. With stormwater projects, we get a lot of favor with some of the permitting agencies for that type of project, so usually it's not too bad. Then you do construction, easily at least a year to a couple years, depends on the scale of the project. We are currently, I'll show you a great picture of All-American Ditch. Right before I walked into the room here, I was out on site at our All-American Ditch project off Map Road this morning. It's showing incredible progress. It's totally on schedule. It's a $5 million project we'll have done within 2 years. And it took 3 years to get the land, or 2 years to get the land in place, and multiple years to get the funding. So when we see, that's why we get so excited about our projects, because we have so much effort that went into them. They're like our babies, you know? So then after you have construction and you're complete, then you operate and maintain the projects. You gotta keep them maintained, keep everything operating well, and then you're monitoring to see, hey, how well are we reducing the nutrients in this project? So to answer all of those questions, we recently took to our Board of County Commissioners an updated water quality needs assessment for Martin County, Florida. To do what we do, our county commissioners need to have an extremely clear picture of exactly what it is we need to do to meet water quality standards and how much it's gonna cost. How else could they possibly make a financial decision without that detailed information? So we provided it to them, and this was originally done a couple years ago, maybe 3 years ago, and now we've recently updated it to take into account all the projects that we've completed and what's remaining. And so I'm going to try to go through these fast, although I'm very excited about being able to talk to you guys today to give more detail, so I'm sorry if I go on and on. Somebody just tug on your ear for talking so much. So our projects, we're focused in this document on the St. Lucie River and Estuary, on the Loxahatchee River, and we do have an area on public education and outreach, which Diane Hughes is here today, is one of our main key special players that makes that happen. And then we also included for the first time an economic value and return on investment for these projects, so we can understand what an investment in these type of projects, what it brings back to the county. So the focus areas were the St. Lucie, Loxahatchee, and they're, as you know, major tributaries to the Indian River Lagoon, and they're both impaired for nutrients, which causes algae blooms and low dissolved oxygen, which are bad for the critters that live there. And we have made a lot of progress. With those 36 projects and that $72 million investment, we've made a huge amount of progress cleaning water in our local community. But when you put in this beautiful wetland, Jackie has some great historic photos that she shares on a regular basis of what this area looked like before we all enjoy living here. And so whether we like it or not, we're all part of the problem. When we decided to live in Florida, there are repercussions for doing that. And so it's going to take a lot of projects in order to sort of reverse those impacts. And so we have there's a couple of plans that govern water quality standards in Florida for us. And that's our St. Lucie River, it's acronym heavy, I apologize. St. Lucie River and Estuary Basin Management Action Plan, or the BMAP. You've heard us say that. And it sets standards for reducing total nitrogen and total phosphorus. The BMAP, another way to think of that is like the blueprint, BMAP blueprint. Kind of like they both start with B, and it kind of guides your direction of how you are going to achieve water quality standards in the area. Well, Lake Okeechobee also has a BMAP. Lake Okeechobee has a BMAP, and Martin County has a little sliver of it, of that watershed, where we actually have some nutrient reduction that we need to do, mostly focused on agricultural lands out in that area of the county. And we also have, for the Loxahatchee River in South County, which isn't something that we really talk that much about here, but we also have some reductions in nutrients that we have to achieve in the Loxahatchee River. So the county's responsibilities for clean water are vast, they're massive. And it's gonna take a very focused, concerted effort for us to make those standards happen. So for the St. Lucie BMAP, includes this is basically the area, includes the following, these planning units. And there's a coastal planning unit shaded here that DEP hasn't included yet in the BMAP. We have a lot of projects in these areas that we could get credit for if they expand the boundary and include that. So we've been pushing for that, and I'm sure that will happen eventually. And projects are included in the needs assessment in all of these areas. And the current, for Lake Okeechobee BMAP, just real quickly, it's focused on large regional scale projects that are all within the Lake Okeechobee watershed. There's been no allocation reductions assigned to stakeholders, and we may have future BMAP reduction requirements, but we're not really focused on this one right now. We're really focused on the St. Lucie one. And then Loxahatchee, the reasonable assurance plan is like a BMAP light. It's kind of like they give you, it's a little less you shall and more of you better. And so, so you better do these projects, not you shall do these projects. So we're working with other stakeholders in the Loxahatchee area where they're still trying to determine what the requirements are. And we're really in the middle of this process right now, but it includes, we have some projects that will benefit the Loxahatchee River and some of those impairments as well. So we're focusing on all the sources of nutrients, urban stormwater runoff, and we do that through, treating through STAs, ameliorating septic systems, try to reduce excess fertilizer applications. And the point here is that you really can't just focus on one source. We can't just focus on the runoff from our yards, and we can't just focus on Lake Okeechobee discharges, and we can't just focus on local basin runoff. We have to focus on all of those things at various levels in order to achieve the water quality that we need. And so the identification of the problem, how do you know you have a problem? We have a data set that we use from the Water Management District, which personally I would like to see kind of us update using some, Orca has a lot of data, Harbor Branch has some data, what we can maybe reassess and look at where we are with some of the new hotspot information, especially since we've invested so much money in the area. But every red dot you see is a hotspot that the Water Management District identified through some very expensive tributary monitoring that they did. And so those hotspots help us determine where our first priority projects are in these green areas that are kind of like spot bubbles, if you will. We don't like to necessarily focus on a piece of land because sometimes land acquisition is required for us to do a project. Sometimes we own the land, it just depends on the project. And then in these orange bubbles, these are like second priority projects that we've identified that we need to do in the county. And these are all maps that are available online on our needs assessment. And so here's the list. We know exactly what we need to do in order to achieve our BMAP requirements from now through 2028. 2028 is the deadline for us to meet these requirements. So our first tier projects are in this area. Our second tier projects are here. We have some operations and maintenance activities which are sort of functional that cover all areas, like street sweeping and vacuum trucks and that sort of thing. So for an investment of $21 million, these are the reductions that we're going to get for the St. Lucie right here, and it tells us what the cost per pound of nitrogen is and what the cost per pound of phosphorus is. And you can compare that to any other community anywhere that's doing similar type projects to make sure that we're being efficient about the removal technologies that we're using. So that's for the St. Lucie. These are those are stormwater projects, 21.3 million. For the septic to sewer conversions, much bigger price tag, $155 million. A lot more projects, a lot more expensive projects, complicated projects. Cost per pound of removal is $1,800, which is much lower than that's a much lower price per pound of phosphorus removed or nitrogen removed than stormwater, because that's what they focus on. But you'll see there's not a column for total phosphorus reduction, which is why we need stormwater projects as well. And then we have flood control projects in this plan, totaling just over $16 million. We have a lot of areas in the county, which you'll see listed here, that have some local flooding issues. And so when you have local flooding issues and you can solve some of the local flooding issues at the same time because of the technologies you use, you oftentimes also improve water quality as a result. And so there is this ancillary benefit of additional benefit for water quality that you can achieve. So there's no smoke and mirrors, there's no surprises. This is the list of projects that we need to get done so we can achieve the VMAP and beyond. You'll see in nitrogen, we're going beyond what's required in the VMAP. The VMAP is an interesting way to measure because it measures what you have to reduce, but it means you can still put some pollution into the water body. And with our Lake Okeechobee discharges, it's just, it puts us always in a situation where we're always at a deficit with water quality. So that's why the county has gone above and beyond until we can really get a fix to the Lake Okeechobee discharges. And just to show you some of the flooded areas, it's hard to see on here, but this was when Tropical Storm Faye came. These areas in blue were flooded areas of the county. And you can see that where the blue dots are, there's house flooding conditions in those areas. And so many times we work with FEMA on these issues, but where we can do anything in the local communities to help improve flooding conditions, we do so. A great example is the All-American Ditch Project I've just mentioned down off Map Road. We were doing a water quality project. Most polluted tributary of going into the St. Lucie with water coming from a neighborhood that was untreated. So we're building a stormwater treatment area to fix that. But in doing so, we also figured out that when we're engineering, we could also improve a flooding condition by putting some new pipes into a neighborhood to the north. And so we incorporated all of those into the project. So we're getting flood improvement at the same time that you're getting water quality improvement. The other thing is the county does a special process to make sure that we're timing our projects so we're not coming in after each other like, oh, we're going to resurface that road. Let's resurface the road and then go in and rip it up to do the water project. We don't do that. We coordinate those efforts to make sure that we're talking about a road overlay in the All-American Ditch area right now, and we're talking about, hey, they're coming in here to do SOAR in a couple of years. Maybe we wait. The roads are going to look pretty rough, but it doesn't make sense to come in and do that. So how close are we? Where are we with this thing? So these green bars right here are what the VMAP tells us we need to reduce. We need to reduce this much for nitrogen, and we need to reduce this much for phosphorus. That's the goal, that you want to reduce by that much. That's the quantity we need to reduce by. These, so in the first 5 years, you have a goal of the VMAP where you have to achieve that. They want to see that you're making progress towards this green. So this blue right here is they're saying, hey, in 5 years, basically by next year, you have to have met this goal because the VMAP was adopted in 2013. So by next year, we have to achieve this. So that's what those are. This is what we've already achieved with our completed projects. So that $72 million investment is that light green bar. You can see we've already exceeded our 5-year reduction requirement by a lot. In fact, we've exceeded the total 15-year requirement. So for nitrogen, we are already in compliance with our 15-year goal with the